The March of Time.
Today, the March of Time focuses on the nostalgia and excitement of modern railroading. March of Time camera crews will take you aboard a famous transcontinental train, take you behind the scenes to participate in the 24-hour activity of men and machines that keep the stock rolling, and report on an American city made great by the growth of railroads. Less than 100 years ago, the John Bull, one of America's first locomotives, made the run between Camden and South Amboy, New Jersey at the breakneck speed of 15 miles per hour. Heavier transportation system. But today, diesel and electric engines, faster and more economical, are rapidly replacing the old steam locomotives that once were so familiar a part of the American landscape.
We are now on one of the club cars of the famous city of Los Angeles, which is traveling at about 70 miles an hour through the state of Iowa en route to the West Coast. This is one of dozens of streamliners which daily carry thousands of passengers from coast to coast. But today we plan to leave this car and train at the rail terminal in Omaha, Nebraska, to take a close look at this fascinating business of railroading in a city a large part of whose whole life depends on railroading. As a point of fact, there are 10 railroad lines serving the city of Omaha. Omaha, 480 miles west of Chicago and 1,800 miles east of Los Angeles, got its start as the last outfitting post for the great westward migration in the 60s. 90 years ago, the railroads really began to open up the West. Then came that fabulous era of expansion with promoters, gamblers, adventurers, and later solid businessmen who helped build that prairie way station of Omaha into today's great railroad center.
Omaha stretches for 12 miles along the west bank of the Missouri River. Its freight and passenger depots, among the largest and busiest in the United States, make Omaha a crossroads of tremendous activity. This streamliner is only one of 48 passenger trains which pull into this terminal each day. Today, Omaha is the thriving metropolis of Nebraska's farm belt, the junction point between the farms and pastures of the West and the markets of the East. Here, during the great westward migration of the past century, Mormon wagon trains made their winter quarters 100 years ago as the last outpost on the long trek to the Great Salt Lake. In this city of 250,000 people, the traditions and history of America's pioneering days are still strong.
In this museum are some of the most cherished mementos of Omaha's history, which are so intimately connected with railroading. In 1865, at the order of President Lincoln, the Union Pacific began the construction of its lines westward out of Omaha. Simultaneously, the Central Pacific pushed its lines eastward from California. During the next 4 years, Union Pacific crews, with Omaha as their base, laid more than 1,000 miles of track. They were sometimes attacked by Indians, as these captured trophies show. These were taken from the bodies of a crew, all unidentified. This is the only one that was identified. This was removed from the body of T. Tobin, the section head. The railroad crewmen took with them a whole town of tents, shacks, gamblers, and hangers-on. The famed hell on wheels, which they picked up and moved periodically to every new end of track. Finally, the two great lines met on May 10th, 1869, at Promontory, Utah. There, government and railroad officials drove in the famous last spike to complete the first coast-to-coast rail system in America. Immediately afterwards, the Central Pacific's Jupiter and the Union Pacific's number 119 puffed slowly toward each other until their cow catchers touched. At last, the bustling east met the golden west. The spectators, in the words of an eyewitness, was "Yell'em fit to bust." Here is a replica of the famous golden spike that completed the transcontinental span. From the same piece of metal of the original golden spike, this ring and watch fob were made and presented to the President of the Union Pacific Railroad. Here is a model of President Lincoln's funeral car, which carried him from Washington to Springfield. And here are one or two pieces of furniture from the same car.
And in Omaha today, the newest development of modern railroading is also in evidence. The gas turbine locomotive, so far used only by Omaha's Union Pacific Railroad. To most of Omaha's residents, the cracked passenger trains which daily pass through the city spell railroading. But to the railroads themselves, passenger transportation is pretty much a money-losing business. On board a Union Pacific diner, Chef Frank Daniels prepares dozens of full-course meals in cramped space that would baffle anyone not trained in this art. On every meal served, the railroad knowingly loses money, 35 cents on each meal. A railroad's profits depend on freight. The freight yards in adjoining Council Bluffs, Iowa, fed by 9 eastern railroads, are the heart of the rail center of Omaha. At the westbound freight desk, Harry Carpenter fills out the destination tags for each freight car in the yard. Tag number 4 sends the car to Los Angeles. Number 5 to Ogden, Utah. Other tags are made up for Oregon, Salt Lake City, Wyoming, and Denver. Out in the freight classification yard, each car receives its proper destination tag. As the cars are tagged, the crews will make up the big westbound freights. Foreman Gordon Scott gives the engineer the signal to start bumping the cars into position. In this classification yard, each final destination point is assigned its own special track. As the diesel switching engine bumps the freight car, it rolls under its own power to the proper track, guided by Switchman Scott. Each day, Union Pacific crews alone process more than 1,000 cars to make up the railroad's fast freights to the west. The Northwest Forwarder, a fast daily freight to the Pacific coast, is made up and waiting. At the district foreman's office, engine dispatcher Gene Zelfel rounds up the train's crew. First on his list is engineer Arthur Franks. Franks has served 33 years with the Union Pacific.
Hello. All right, you call for a 115 manifest, the 9031.
Okay, Cecil, I'll be there. Who's the fireman?
John Blue, the fireman.
Usually, Frank's run takes him away from home about 2 days. His wife, Agnes, has grown accustomed to these departures. At the Council Bluffs Roundhouse, engine 9031, a veteran steam locomotive, is brought out for the day's run.
Each and every steam engine has its own personality. Some are energetic and lively. Others are just plain lazy. We who have run steam engines for many years must face reality. Every day, more and more diesels are replacing the old steam engine. The transition from steam to diesel affects me much as it did the old cavalryman when they took his horse away from him and put him on a jeep. I run diesels as well as steam. I have seen the diesels replace the steam engines. I have seen the gas turbine enter into the picture. And who can say that possibly I might someday see an atomic locomotive?
The switch and control tower crew set the signals and switches that will send the northwest forwarder out of the yards onto the main line. The train's progress is shown on the panel above the switch handle. It is also relayed to the tower by telephone.
Philip, let's be coming up track 1. Let him come.
XD3.
Switches and signals are set. And finally, Engineer Franks gets the high ball.
High ball, Art.
Boarding his caboose, is responsible for the entire train and its freight. Once the train is underway, Conductor Conant settles down to checking the manifest, the paperwork that is such an important part of his job.
Comes the diesel now on the Denver-Omaha stock train.
Of all the trains moving east to Omaha, the cattle trains from the West's ranching country are the most important to this Nebraska community. Omaha is the world's largest cattle market. In cattle revenue, Omaha exceeds even the famous Chicago stockyard. Each day, dozens of livestock trains from all over the West bring their freight of cattle, hogs and sheep to Omaha's Union Stockyards. Here they are herded into pens to await the arrival of buyers from the large packing houses.
Boss of Omaha's Union Stockyards is this gentleman with me, Mr. Harry V. Coffey, who supervises this great stockyard where about $2 million worth of business is transacted each working day. This is accomplished without any working agreement, any contract, no down payment. Is that right, Mr. Coffey?
Correct, Van. Mondays are our largest day, but average, we'll run $2 million a day for every working day in the year. Now these cattle that you see in these pens, there's cattle weighing 1,000 pounds, they're bringing $23 today, that a year ago brought $33. That's $10 a hundred less than a year ago. That's $100 per head less. Now these commission men, we have 48 commission firms here, and order buyers and packer buyers go from firm to firm, from pen to pen, looking these cattle over, making their business, and arguing price with these commission men, and that's their daily ritual. Now over here, there's Bill Ingram, one of our commission men, arguing with Jimmy Boyle, one of the order buyers here on the market, on that pen of cattle.
I'll give 3 for the load of cattle, 23 cents, and mark that stag 21.
This board shows the livestock receipts at the principal markets today. For instance, Chicago with 2,000 head of cattle. Omaha has 4,500 head of saleable cattle here today.
4,500 head of cattle. A very impressive figure, but Mr. Coffey, it just means a lot of steaks to me.
Well, fine. How'd you like to have one with me tonight?
I'd like it.
Good.
But first there was time for a visit to the Union Pacific's vast repair shops. Here passenger coaches are completely rebuilt. In this section alone, 70 men are continuously employed in painting passenger and freight cars. Passenger car seats are repaired and reupholstered. Newly developed materials and fabrics are used to help make every coach attractive and comfortable. Making new curtains for diners and Pullman cars is a full-time job for Oscar Jensen and Alan Means. In the silver plating department, the table equipment for the Union Pacific's diners is kept in shining condition. Harry Little puts some of the hundreds of coffee pots used every day into an electrolytic bath for replating. A scratch brushing machine puts a high gloss on this pot, which will join the 1,400 other pieces regularly carried by a large diner. Outside in the wheel pit, scores of wheels are stored. Periodically, they are reground to within 0.02 of an inch of perfect roundness. Even the slightest imperfection can cause damage to fragile freight shipments. This roller bearing from the wheel of an 800 class locomotive is inspected for flaws. In the heavy repair shops, these large locomotives are completely overhauled and reconditioned every 6 months. Foreman Phil Lang supervises the delicate job of lowering the heavy engine onto the driving wheels. The end of the day furnishes the opportunity for that visit to Sam Neese's Spare Time Cafe, where each customer selects his own steak from carefully aged steer loin. Stockyard President Harry Coffey, who is playing host, is an expert.
This steak is out of this world, just tender as butter that you could see it. Good. Look at him. And I think you want about an inch and a half. About an inch and a half. Okay, then I'll go to the machine and cut them for you.
Sam Neese started his cafe 15 years ago with 4 tables. Today, his staff serves 1,000 steaks a day to hundreds of hungry customers. Neese insists on aging his steaks at least 20 days before preparing them.
This is a typical Omaha steak, a choice Omaha steak. Thank you. I hope all the rest of it's as good as this.
I hope so, too, Mr. Coffey. The end of a truly beautiful day.
Folks, how are we doing on the steaks here?
Sam's steaks are wonderful.
Well, that's a larger steak tender.
Just melt in your mouth.
Oh, that's wonderful. I hope you folks enjoyed and come back again.
We'll do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Throughout the night, while Omaha sleeps, the great transcontinental trains rush toward the city on the plain. Between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m., 8 streamliners pass through Omaha on their way to and from the West Coast.
West Tower, number 103, left Broadway, 1:50 a.m.
All right, sir, okay.
Train number 103, Streamliner, City of Los Angeles.
At 3 o'clock each early morning, the westbound city of Los Angeles pulls into Omaha's Union Station for a 10-minute stop. In what must be a well-coordinated operation, the service crews swarm over the big trains, checking brakes, hydraulic and electric connections, fitting generators and air conditioning equipment. The entire train from end to end is checked over and cleaned in 9 minutes. All batteries and emergency equipment are checked. Fresh water pumped into train storage tanks. During the short interval, another Union Pacific train pulls alongside, followed by another diesel from Chicago. The clatter of mail trucks is sometimes too much to resist for the younger passengers. Omaha's Union Station is also a stop for the Rock Island's Rockets on their runs between Chicago and the West. The Union Pacific's diners are stocked with fresh foods and the latest news for the passengers' breakfast table.
Last call, Union Pacific going west, train number 103, streamliner, City of Los Angeles. Last call, Union Pacific going west, all aboard.
A solitary passenger boards the train in the early hours of the morning. 10 minutes after the big train pulled in, the engineer of the westbound City of Los Angeles gets the highball to start for the coast. The show is over. The porter buttons up the train. The engineer gets the signal. And the streamliner slides into the night. Time marches on.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, it's time for us to say goodbye to the great railway center of Omaha, which has sometimes been called the gateway to the West. This is Westbrook Van Voorhis speaking for the editors of the March of Time, inviting you to be with us again next week for another chapter in the March of Time television series.